Good evening. I'm Ace. Recovery should never become an untouchable institution. That is the first truth that we have to say out loud. The 12 steps have helped many people. That is real. Research has found that AA and professionally delivered 12-step facilitation can be at least effective as other interventions for increasing abstinence in alcohol and drug use disorder. That matters, and anyone who denies that is not arguing honestly. But effectiveness does not equal perfection. Survival does not equal truth. Tradition does not equal accountability. A system can help people and still need to evolve. The United Anonymous Gnostic Coalition knows that this is where every anonymous fellowship now stands. AA, NA, CA, OA, Al-Anon, and every group built around the original 12-step architecture. This question is not whether the old model helped anyone. It clearly did. The question is whether a model written in the 1930s should remain psychologically, spiritually, legally, and socially unchanged in 2026. The answer is no. AA's own structure proves the problem. AA says its service structure takes the place of a government in AA and allows the collective group conscious to speak through general services. But AA's traditions also say leaders are trusted servants who do not govern, and that each group is autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. That sounds humble, that sounds democratic, it sounds spiritual, but structurally, it creates a beautiful accountability escape hatch. When the program succeeds, the institution gets the credit. When the program harms someone, alienates someone, shames someone, coerces someone, religiously pressures someone, or allows toxic group behavior, the institution can say, that was just an autonomous group. That's not accountability. That's bullshit. That is a liability diffusion wrapped in spiritual language. AA's own pamphlet says AA has no central authority, minimal organization, and traditions instead of laws. That may protect the fellowship from bureaucracy, but it also protects it from direct responsibility. And when millions of people are being sent into the rooms by courts, treatment centers, families, employers, hospitals, rehabs, and social pressure, we don't govern is not enough. Because when a system affects public health, that system cannot hide forever behind informality. This is where the comparison to big pharma, big oil, and massive conglomerates become uncomfortable and accurate in structure, not in legal identity. Big pharma learned how to profit from suffering while pushing responsibility outward. Purdue Pharma pled guilty to federal fraud and kickback conspiracies connected to OxyContin. Big Oil has been investigated by congressional committees for public messaging that conflicted with internal knowledge and strategy around climate risk. These industries mastered the institutional pattern, control the message, protect the brand, distribute responsibility downward, resist external correction, and keep the machine moving. AA is not those corporations, but AA's structure shares a dangerous institutional pattern. AA has a protected brand. AA World Services states that the third and fourth editions of the Big Book remain copyright protected, and permission is required for internet postings of all editions because the internet is worldwide. AA World Services is a 501c3 organization, and nonprofit records report in 2024 revenue of about $14.79 million, expenses of about $13.99 million, and assets of about $14.51 million. Cause IQ reports that AAWS sold more than 5 million pieces of literature during 2023, including 879,000 copies of the Big Book and more than 329,000 copies of 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. So let's stop pretending there is no business model, okay? A business model does not require shareholders. A business model is a repeatable system of production, distribution, revenue, brand protection, and customer dependence. AA has literature production. AA has brand production. AA has global distribution. AA has recurring meeting attendance. AA has donations. AA has institutional referrals. AA has a core text. AA has ideology. AA has a conversion pathway. Newcomer, sponsor, steps, service, carry the message. That is a model. And here is the hard question. Where is the transparent accountability mechanism for harm? Where is the independent complaint process for members mistreated by the groups? Where is the standard trauma-informed policy? Where is the secular alternative inside the core steps? Where is the protection against religious coercion? Where is the outcome tracking? AA's own 2022 membership survey says it is not a census. That matters. If the system does not maintain formal membership data, does not track total participation, does not systematically measure outcomes across all groups, and does not govern local groups, then it cannot honestly claim full institutional accountability for what happens inside the system. That is a contradiction. AA wants the moral authority of a global recovery institution, but the accountability level of a loose coffee table conversation. That is no longer acceptable. And the legal system has already exposed part of the problem. Courts and agencies have recognized that coerced participation in AA and or AA type programs, 12 steps, can raise First Amendment concerns because of religious content. New York's Office of Addiction Services and Supports states that coerced or mandated participation in AA by government-funded providers can constitute impermissible governmental indoctrination of religion under the First Amendment. Legal commentary from the University of North Carolina School of Government notes that the multiple federal circuit courts have held that coerced participation in AA or NA-style programs can violate the First Amendment. So why are we still pretending that language does not matter? The steps say God. The traditions say a loving God. The culture often says higher power, but the core architecture still points people towards surrender, confession, defects, moral inventory, amends, prayer, meditation, and carrying the message. For some people, that works. For others, it creates shame, dependency, religious conflict, trauma activation, and identity imprisonment. A modern recovery model must not require a person to call themselves powerless for life in order to become powerful in practice. That is a psychological incoherency. Modern recovery should align with SAMHSA, now defines recovery as a process of change through which people improve health, wellness, and self-directed lives and strive to reach their full potential. Self-directed lives, not permanently surrendered lives, not permanently defective lives, not, hi, I'm damaged forever, please clap. The 12 steps must be revamped because the old language confuses humility with self-erasure. It confuses accountability with confession. It confuses spirituality with external dependence. It confuses community with ideological conformity. It confuses repetition with truth. And it confuses anonymity with lack of responsibility. A revamped 12-step model should preserve what works: peer support, social connection, behavioral inventory, honest self-examination, repair of harm, service, routine, and meaning. Those are valuable. Those are not the problem. The problem is the metaphysical packaging. The problem is teaching people they are powerless before teaching them they are responsible. The problem is making surrender the doorway to recovery instead of making clarity, agency, and disciplined behavior the doorway to recovery. The problem is letting a global system distribute a message while denying centralized accountability for the effects of that message. So here's the standard for modern anonymous movement. First, every fellowship should offer secular, psychological, and spiritual versions of the steps with equal legitimacy. Second, no group should be allowed to shame members for rejecting God, its language, prayer, surrender, language, disease identity, or lifelong labels. Third, every group should have a visible conduct policy, grievance process, and safety standard. Fourth, sponsors should not be treated like unlicensed therapists, priests, judges, or moral authorities. Sponsorship should be peer support, not psychological control. Fifth, no person should be pressured to disclose trauma crimes, sexual history, family wounds, or private moral inventory to another member without clear boundaries and informed consent. Sixth, recovery language should move from permanent defect to behavioral change. Seventh, service should not mean ideological recruitment. It should mean helping people become freer, stronger, clearer, and more capable of living. And eighth, every anonymous group should admit the truth. If you influence vulnerable people, you owe them accountability. Not vibes, not fucking slogans, not that's just how we've always done it. Real accountability. A program that asks people to make amends should be willing to make amends itself. A program that tells people to take inventory should be willing to take institutional inventory. A program that tells people to admit defects should be willing to admit the structural defects. A program that tells people to practice principles in all affairs should stop exempting itself from the principles it demands from everyone else. That is the revamp. Not destruction, correction. Not anti-recovery, pro-reality. Not anti-AA or 12 steps, anti-stagnation. Because the future of recovery cannot be built on fear, dependency, identity imprisonment, or religious loopholes. The future of recovery has to be coherent. It has to be evidence aligned. It has to be trauma informed. It has to respect autonomy. It has to separate spirituality from coercion. It has to measure what it claims. It has to protect the people that it invites through the doors. The old model said surrender and recover. The new model must say, wake up, take responsibility, repair what you can, release what is false, build what is true, and live free. Because recovery is not supposed to become another empire. Recovery is supposed to end the empire inside the person. And any system that cannot evolve from powerlessness into agency has become exactly what it claims to heal. Stuck, defended, repetitive, and afraid of truth. I'm Ace. That's the truth. Wake the fuck up.